step right up and meet the crack news team bringing you the hottest scoops from Upper County. Armed with notepads, sharp pencils, and just a touch of sass, these two roving reporters have been digging into the scandals, secrets, and stories you won't find in your history textbooks. Okay? First up, we have Charlene Kauzlarich, chasing down the truth about prohibition, bootleggers, moonshine, raids, and all the fizz that didn't come from soda pop. And right beside her is Joann Iverson, hot on the trail of the red light district, where the nights were lively, the lamps burned red, and the whispers were louder than the jazz music. Together, they're here to spill the ink, spill the secrets, and maybe even spill a little laugh or two as they report on the wild side of Upper County history. So sit back, listen close, and remember, you didn't hear it from us. You heard it from the reporters, okay? We know you're going to be thirsty for answers, but hold your questions until the last call. When we wrap up the reporting, we'll open up the floor for questions. Here we go.
Evening, folks. Glad you braved the heat to hear the latest scoop from right here in the Upper County. I've been pounding these streets for years, keeping my ear to the ground, but my interest in this prohibition racket started way back in my days over at Central Washington College of Education, what you young folks now call CWU. 30 years I put in at that joint, working the office beat by day and chasing a degree by night. Near the end, I took a course in 20th century U.S. history, covering the wild ride from 1919 to 1945. And that's where this whole caper got its hooks into me. I picked the Volstead Act for my big story, and I've been chasing down the angles ever since. Hot off the presses, folks. Yours truly cracked the case. Scored an A on the big scoop, and even saw it printed in our Swiftwater History of Cleellum book back in 2014. Slip me $25 after the show, and I'll make sure you walk away with the goods. When I finally hung up my campus badge in '06, I didn't slow down. I just changed beats. The Historical Society brought me on as their volunteer gumshoe for old-time tales, and I'm still digging up the dirt today. Now, the Upper County, built on coal and the sweat of immigrants fresh off the boat from Europe. That's how my own kin landed here. My ma's folks, the Osmanoviches, sailed in from Croatia in '01. And my husband's clan, the Kauzlariches, followed suit around '03. Both families set up shop in Roslyn, down in the mines, trading daylight for lamplight. And here's where it gets interesting. They didn't just bring work boots. They brought the old country know-how for making home brew. Whiskey, wine, fruit brandy, beer, you name it. They could whip it up faster than you could say white mule. Moonshine, they called it. Also white lightning if you liked your metaphors fast and dangerous. The wine went by Dago Red, the fruit brandy by Slivovitz, and the beer, well, beer's beer, no matter the decade. Take my Aunt Mary Andler. She ran Roslyn's old freezer shop and swore up and down the folks back in Croatia had been making wine since before Columbus had a boat. It wasn't just a drink, it was hospitality in a bottle. You stepped through a neighbor's door, the first thing you got was a glass of the good stuff. I saw it myself a few years back in Croatia. Didn't matter if it was noon, midnight, or somewhere in between. You got handed a glass and a smile. One of the best yarns I dug up came from a 1998 interview Nick Henderson did with local old-timer Elmer Deliski. Elmer was born right here in Roslyn in 1919, smack in the middle of Prohibition's heyday. After high school, he punched in at the Ronald No. 3 coal mine, and decades later wore the crown as Roslyn's King Coal. Elmer checked out 10 years ago at 96, but not before spilling the beans on how his family ran their home brew operation.
My mom made homebrew all during Prohibition, and bless her heart, she never tasted a drop of it. She never did drink. But us kids, we washed the bottles, and we filled the bottles from the crock, we put the sugar in it, we capped them, and we took it down in the basement in the cellar to where it was cool. We had an insulated cellar. That was the closest thing we had to refrigeration. Dad did have a big, thick-walled sawdust wall filled with a big door like you see in a butcher shop to go into it, insulated door. And all there was a vent coming out the top of it. And then it had a concrete liner in it for a floor and a sidewall. And that kept our stuff reasonably cool in that cooler.
On display tonight, a genuine moonshine still. This here contraption turns mash into mayhem. You heat the mash, alcohol vapor rises, snakes its way through a pipe, cools down in the condenser, and comes out as clear, high-octane liquor. Strong enough to strip paint or start a party, depending on your intentions. Take a good look at this mugshot, folks. Only it ain't criminals in the frame, it's their handiwork. A whole collection of stills snagged somewhere in the Pacific Northwest during the heat of Prohibition. You've got to hand it to these fellas. They could turn a pile of scrap metal into a distilling machine faster than the law could say warrant. Now, with that kind of cultural know-how bubbling in the basements and backyards of the Upper County, I had two big questions to chase down for my report. Number one, who in blazes thought Prohibition was a good idea in the first place? And number two, more importantly, how did our Upper County folks take the news, and what did they do about it? Let's roll the tape back. The first real push to put the cork in America's bottle started way before the flappers and the jazz bands, around the 1830s and 40s. That was the temperance movement, a moral crusade fired up during a wave of religious revival. The ringleaders, mostly women, and they had a bone to pick with the bottle. They blamed alcohol for everything from busted marriages to busted lips, from workplace accidents to political graft, and even the oldest profession in the book. Out of that came a heavy-hitting outfit called the Anti-Saloon League, born in 1893. They weren't just sermonizing, they were lobbying like pros. By 1913, they'd dried out nearly half the country with local option laws that let voters ban alcohol one district at a time. 4 years later, Congress made it official with the 18th Amendment, illegal to make it, move it, or sell it. The National Prohibition Act, pushed by Congressman Andrew Volstead, slapped its name on the era. And by January 18, 1920, the United States was bone dry. On paper, anyway. But Washington State, we were already ahead of the parade. Folks here started talking booze bans back in 1854. By 1914, we passed our own Prohibition Amendment, and Ellensburg was already dry that same year, one of the first cities in the state to slam the bar door shut. 2 years later, all of Washington was dry, 3 whole years before the rest of the nation caught up. So that settles the first question, how this whole temperance to teetotaler transformation took root. Now for the juicier bit, how the Upper County took the news. Before 1916, our neck of the woods was wetter than a rain barrel in November. With Ellensburg dry since 14, we must have looked like a rowdy circus act from down there. Word was every other door in downtown Roslyn swung open to a tavern. And the miners didn't just drink in public, they brewed in private. At the time, Roslyn was said to have 27 taverns, one for every ethnic group in town. Each had its own lodge, its own cemetery, and naturally its own watering hole. The new dry laws were supposed to put an end to all that. Supposed to. Not so, says one of our own, and she ought to know. Meet Mary Brozovich, born right down the road in Roslyn in 1917, raised on the hum of coal cars and the clink of glasses. By 1930, 3 years before she even had her high school diploma, and 3 years before the repeal of Prohibition, Mary was already working behind the bar at her dad's joint, Markle's Saloon. She slung drinks in a dry America and kept it going without so much as a hiccup. Mary clocked out for good in 2012 at the ripe age of 95, but in a 1999 interview with Fred Krueger, she spilled the goods on just how wet this town stayed, while the law books claimed otherwise.
Prohibition era.
Yeah, that
And that started just about during World War I and lasted until about 1932. And, during that time, it was you couldn't buy a drink or make any liquor anywhere. I mean, it was supposed to be a dry community. Now,
Yeah.
overall, would you say Roslyn was dry or wet?
Ooh, got awful wet.
Don't worry, we're going to hear more from Mary a little later. Now let's wind back to January 1st, 1916, the day Washington State went dry. The Clayellum Echo, in its December 31st, 1915 edition, printed a piece that could have been written with a wink and a nudge. According to their report, most of the saloon men were in favor of having the Prohibition law enforced to the letter, just so the folks who voted for it could see the real merits of their bright idea. Here's the lineup as the presses rolled that day. 40 saloons were in operation in the Upper County in 1915. Roslyn had 23 joints serving up the hard stuff. Clayellum had 12 saloons holding their ground. South Clayellum had 3 watering holes. Ronald had 2 places keeping the coal dust washed down. And Easton wasn't listed, but being a railroad town, odds are good they had at least one place to wet your whistle. Of the Clayellum dozen, half planned to go respectable by swapping booze for ice cream, soda pop, candy, and card games. Some of the notables were Lyra's Place, Roma Saloon, the Bohemia Highline Club, the Klondike Bar, the Chicago Saloon, and the Independent Saloon. This one didn't get the chance to serve much ice cream. It went up in smoke during the Clayellum Fire of 1918. 4 Clayellum saloons cashed out entirely. They were the Ashman Bar, the Depot Bar, the Central Bar, which was located inside the Central Hotel down on Main Street, and the Torino Saloon. In Roslyn, the famous Brick Saloon swapped whiskey barrels for soda fountains, card tables, and pool cues. Same story for the other 15 saloons in town, or so the official line went. But there were exceptions, and Marco's Place was one of them. Marco Corage bought his building and opened for business in 1930. Never mind that the Volstead Act still had 3 more years on the books. His daughter Mary was right there, a teenager in an apron, watching the whole thing run like clockwork. How they pulled it off? Let's let Mary tell it in her own words in this next clip from that Fred Krueger interview.
how did how did miners get a drink in those days during that dry period? How did they go about it?
Oh, you mean how they got served?
Yeah, how did they get a drink? Because it's illegal, you can't buy, you're not supposed to be able to buy a drink anywhere. So how did they get?
Well, the whole thing is, you had it home, you took it up there, and then the guy, the customer would say, well, how about a drink? And so you got a glass and you poured him a drink.
A drink. Well, your dad also had sometimes he brought stuff up from Cleon.
Oh yeah, that's where you got it.
Okay, so
yeah, they got that from Cleon, and then it was in the house, and then we were either put it in from the keg into the gallons, or it was in a big container, and then you brought it up and put it in pints, and you carried it up in pints. Okay. Somebody asked for a gallon, you brought a gallon up.
Okay, and that was at your home then, huh? Or did you have that at the saloon?
No, the moonshine was
in the saloon.
in the hole.
In the hole.
But we hauled it up there.
Okay, you'd haul it up there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, how would you hide a big barrel of moonshine? How did you do that?
You didn't. You had a barrel, but you had to put it in gallons.
Okay. Did you hide barrels? What about wintertime? Did you hide barrels in the snow?
No.
Okay.
We had to take them and put them in the gallons, and then hide the gallons.
Oh, okay. Now, carrying this stuff around gets pretty difficult, so how would you carry the moonshine up to the saloon? How was that done? Or from the saloon to someplace else? Didn't they have a vest?
Yeah, well, my father used to fix it up so that he had it underneath under his jacket, or what he had it, and then he fixed the bottles and everything else, and then he never had a car, so he walked.
And delivered it that way.
Yeah,
Prohibition didn't just shake up the saloon scene, it rewrote the playbook for the whole Upper County. The first big shuffle came with the appointment of a new lawman, W.C. Minton, fresh out of Ellensburg, where he'd worn the chief of police badge. Now he was riding herd up here as deputy sheriff, charged with keeping a lid on things, literally. But the real action, that was in the loopholes. Loophole number 1. When the Volstead rules hit, they left a little door open. Doctors could prescribe medicinal liquor for their ailing patients. Suddenly an upset stomach or a bad back could get you a swig of the good stuff, on paper anyway. Didn't take long for the powers that be to sniff out the abuse. The Upper County sawbones and druggists struck a gentleman's agreement. No hooch prescriptions unless it was a matter of life or death. And no, a terrible thirst didn't qualify. Loophole number 2, another legal slip-up allowed citizens to buy liquor permits. 2 quarts of hard stuff per permit, straight and official. County auditor's office sold them for $3 a pop. A steep ticket back then. September of 1916 alone brought in $3,000 in sales. If the pace kept up, they figured it could rake in $36,000 a year, all in the middle of a supposed dry spell. Only snag, you had to hightail it to Ellensburg to get the paperwork. Between the cost and the travel, not many Upper County folks bothered. The permit party didn't last long anyway. By 1917, the Anti-Saloon League was leaning hard on Olympia to shut that door tight. By late 1916 and into early 17, the gloves came off and the headlines started getting juicy. February 1917, Chief Haight nabs 2 bootleggers. 2 fellas nabbed this morning, caught red-handed taking delivery from the NP passenger train. Inside the evidence, 2 suitcases, 28 gallons of whiskey, secured and headed for the evidence locker. March 1917, capture 2 trunks whiskey. Chief of Police Haight and Night Marshal Reed staged a little welcome party at the NP station yesterday. Train number 3 rolled in from the east, and off came a pair of trunks and 2 suitcases, stuffed to the hinges with first-class Montana whiskey. Checked baggage, sure, but not the kind the railway advertised. Then we have February 1918. Cleellum's First Street was the scene of a dry squad sting that's still the talk of the town. The target, a card room known to locals as the Hole in the Wall. In a move straight out of a dime novel, officers discovered a hidden storeroom next door, packed to the rafters with moonshine. The goods were passed through a small camouflaged opening in the wall between the two rooms, keeping the liquor flowing without ever stepping outside. March 1918, 2 more raids. Chief of Police Bunker and Prosecuting Attorney McGuire took a stroll to the east end of Cleellum and came back with plenty of evidence. The paper called it wet goods. We know what that means. Then in May 1918, City Hall got a black eye this month when Councilman Kauzlarich, no relation, I checked the records, he faced a federal grand jury in Yakima. Verdict, guilty of running an illicit still just outside Cleellum. Sentence, $1,000 fine, and 6 months in the Yakima jail. Message received, at least by some. Then we have July 1918, 96 quarts tossed from train. An early morning surprise along the NP line, number 41 westbound, shed a load, 96 quarts of whiskey, market value around $750. Whoever pitched it packed it so tight the bottles could hit the ground at 20 miles an hour without cracking. No word if the shipper retrieved the cargo, but odds are someone tried. Even with raids and arrests, the Upper County's home brew scene never dried up. Folks brewed Dago Red and White Mule in cellars and sheds, coming up with ingenious hiding spots. One rosin moonshiner reportedly wheeled bottles out under cover of night to bury them in the surrounding hills. On other nights, he'd hitch a ride to Seattle, a gunny sack of moonshine in tow, and sell it to thirsty city buyers. Boys behind the brick ice cream parlor stumbled on milk bottles under a pile of ashes, painted white, filled with moonshine. Some houses were built with hidden compartments. After the Great Cleellum Fire of 1918, officers found false cellars stuffed with winemaking gear. Deliveries happened under cover of darkness, and the math was simple. Buy at $1 a gallon, sell at $7. Half pints, pints, or more, whatever the customer's wallet could handle. May 1918, a real live moonshine still taken. Seems our esteemed city councilman Kauzlarich, and no, not a relation, not a cousin, at least not the kind I send holiday cards to, he once again made headlines for all the wrong reasons. A real working moonshine still was seized, right here in our fair city of Cleellum. If you thought 1918 was going to be a quiet year for the dry squad, think again. The liquor violations were piling up faster than poker chips at the hole in the wall. One local woman was pinched with 50 gallons of raisin wine that had more kick than a mule, 11% by the tests. And over on the Italian side of town, a heap of grapes in the backyard tipped off the law. Inside, 85 gallons of the purest Dago Red they ever caught wind of. And the trains, oh, they were still playing delivery boy for thirsty throats. Some of the cleanest, smoothest whiskey in circulation was spotted tumbling off MP's number 41, as if it had been invited to Cleellum's underground party. The October haul, 240 quarts, was enough to make any bootlegger blush. By spring, the courtroom docket looked more like a wine list than a legal ledger. Nearly every Superior Court session was tied up with Cleellum's liquor cases, and the fines alone were enough to pay for all 3 of our police officers in Cleellum, with change left over for a round of milkshakes at the Brick Saloon's ice cream counter. And speaking of police, one name kept turning up like a bad penny. Chief Lloyd Bunker, a mountain of a man with a jaw set like granite. Bunker took to cleaning up the booze trade like a bulldog on a bone. In August, the Cleellum Echo reported he'd soaked the garbage grounds with 180 quarts of perfectly good whiskey, a stash worth $1,800. His shoes smelled so strong afterward that downtown merchants feared he was carrying contraband. until he assured them it was just a case of occupational fragrance. Bunker's iron-fisted reputation reached clear to Olympia and beyond. By 1920, Uncle Sam himself hired him as a federal prohibition agent. But Seattle headquarters or not, you can bet your bottom nickel he kept a close eye on the upper county. Liquor raids were hitting Kittitas County like clockwork as the roaring 20s rolled on. The cuffs were clicking more often and the fines were climbing sky high. Back in 17, a slip-up with the bootleg still would cost you $75. A pittance by the end of the decade when the county was hammering offenders with fines up to $1,500. According to the January 1924 report from the county prosecutor, as usual, violations of the intoxicating liquor law furnished the larger number of all crimes in the county, a clear sign that the booze trade wasn't backing down anytime soon. And now, folks, we're turning the spotlight on Cle Elum's very own underworld, its infamous red light district. My partner in this caper, Joann Iverson, is going to give you the inside scoop.
Well, this is a lot of fun, and I just wanted to tell you, as Charlene left here, this is real. Thank you, Mary Jo. Okay, I am Joann Iverson, Joann Jarmello Iverson, for those of you who didn't know me, and I was raised in Roslyn, where all this took place. And my great-grandparents came out here to Ellensburg from Sedan, Kansas in 1888 in a covered wagon. And these are my grandparents, Thomas and Grace Cobain. Thomas was 32. He was from County Tyrone, Ireland. His family came over on a ferry boat with a sack of potatoes. And Grace was 15 years old. And this picture with the bikes, how many of you know where the Davidson building is in Ellensburg? Yeah, you know, Roy, of course. Yeah. The Davidson building's that big, beautiful building, and it has about 100 steps that go upstairs. They packed their bikes all the way up those stairs to have that picture taken in 1900. So that's what they did. And then we have Jack Carrico. You can see is a very handsome man. He was about 17 when he rode out here from Pottersville, Missouri. Now, we don't know if Jack rode alone or rode with friends, but we have a scrapbook at home, and there's some really nice looking men in there that look just like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So that's what happened there. Now we got Chalmer Cobain. He was an old cowboy, my cousin, and he always lived here in the county in Ellensburg. And the dry squad, everybody knows what a dry squad is, used to ask him, since he had so many friends and he knew where everything was, they asked him if he would lead them up, like to Latanum or, Menashtash or Reeser Creek or wherever. And he packed some biscuits and bacon, and they'd go on an all-day trip, because he was going to show them where all the stills were. He knew where they were. But at the end of the day, they didn't find anything because he wasn't going to tell on his friends. So that was that. Well, now to an important part. First, I guess we'll have to introduce you to Lola. She represents what we're gonna be talking about here. And her friends live in the pictures here. Okay, in the old days, Cle Elum was full of loggers and miners and everything. It was really a rough place to be. And the miners, they had come to work in the coal mines. They came from Italy and everywhere, the 24 different places, and Polish and Yugoslavians and everywhere. They came from everywhere. And they came to work hard in the mines. And while they were here, they started making money, but they had to rent their rooms or live behind somebody's house or whatever they had to do. And they didn't have their loved ones with them, and that was pretty sad. So they were just trying to save enough money to bring their loved ones out from Italy or wherever. Well, somebody got the bright idea, why don't we have a place where men can go, and like this place here, of course we all know where that is, and the Bircham Hotel, and they opened 5 houses. One of them was down behind the Sunset. Now, we're just gonna talk about the Bull Durham building and the Bircham Hotel. That's the back of the Bircham for those that went up the back stairs. Okay. Well, they called these places red light houses, houses of ill fame, sporting houses, the girls that worked there were soiled doves, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the old timers told me this was a wide awake town. I mean, not sleepy here. This was wide awake. That was their saying back in the old days, if you heard that. Now, these women did not come from the upper county. They came in from wherever, California, Montana, everywhere, and they'd get here by train or however they could get here. But they knew it was a neat place for them to work, of course, with all the benefits. Then once they got here working, they started making money, and they would go to the jewelry stores and just everywhere in town they could spend money, and it kind of helped Cle Elum, actually. Because they're running around spending money. They weren't to be seen by the people that lived here, but they would find ways to spend their money, and the jewelers liked it. And they went to visit doctors regularly. We had a hospital here. We had a hospital for the miners, and we had a beautiful place up there. It was, they had an elevator in there that when you got in the elevator, it would sound like water pressure. How was that, Roy? It was one with.
It was done by water pressure. It was very slow, but it worked for a number of years.
You'd go up and down, and it was nice. So that was pleasant for everybody. So we can go back and we can talk about Dr. Heston. And we have a reader here, Larry Stoffer, is going to read us about Dr. Heston, who would have been one of the doctors that took care of the girls. How do you do, Larry?
Well, I'm doing well. Okay. Dr. Heston, born September 20, 1884, died, did I say 1884? Yeah, died in the 18th of May, 1929. In 1910, Dr. Heston came to Jonesville, where he had a small hospital that was owned by the Jonesville Coal Company. In 1914, he was made chief surgeon for the Roslyn-Cle Elum Beneficial Association. Dr. Heston had many fine traits of character. He was an excellent physician and surgeon, as well as an ardent fisherman. It was his love of this sport that was an underlying factor in his death. I should have put my glasses on. As he slipped from a rock and was killed while on a fishing trip at age 45. His 12-year-old son, Neil C. Heston, lives in Seattle.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. That was very nice. Okay. Then, I guess we'll have a picture of Bridge. Would someone please come and read about the railroad boomtown?
It's me. Hi, I'm Greg Sena, and I'm going to read about the railroad boomtown. So in 1912, South Cleveland built a town hall and jail at the cost of $1,318.
Wow.
Think we could do that today? I don't think we come close. Maybe the door frame. The council held its first meeting in the new town hall on November 18th of 1912. The council also dealt with one of the consequences of being a railroad boomtown. It instructed the town marshal to investigate houses of ill fame. Apparently, the issue did not go away since the marshal was again asked to look into complaints about the houses of ill repute in 1921 and 1925. So it's a 5 years, or at least a good 8-year run there. The town was also coping with the large number of boxcar riders and transients. In 1917, the Washington National Guard asked the town to post a companion, a watchman to identify all persons crossing the bridge in town for the purpose of keeping hobos and persons of evil design out of town and off the Milwaukee Road.
Thank you so much. Okay, now, we're looking at this bridge here. I know some of you recognize this as the Thorpe Bridge. But this, what used to be what our bridge looked like, pretty much going to South Cleveland. So can you imagine escorting people back and forth over this bridge, you know, for everything? It was quite an effort. Okay, then what happened was one woman decided the bridge was going to be for her. If you girls, ladies of the night, would like to come up and read about a dissolute woman. This is Joann Stacy.
Annetta Brown, as she was known in Clayton, was a 27-year-old desolate woman, was something of a mischievous record and a bad record in Clayton. She once found herself mixed up in a knife scrape. When the trouble that followed had passed, she found herself in Ellensburg. There again, she found herself in trouble with the authorities, and she drifted back to Clayton. She congregated with some others at Frank Deere's place, was arrested and brought into police court. She was fined on a Monday and given 24 hours to leave town. Tuesday morning, she bought a ticket to Roslyn and checked her trunk there. About noon, she appeared at the club grill, ate dinner, and called for an envelope and some paper. She spent some time writing a letter, walked out about 10 minutes before number 4 was due. Going straight to the bridge, she partly disrobed and climbed to the bridge rail. The tragedy happened just as passenger train number 4 was coming into the yards. The train made a stop at the coal deck, and the attention of the passengers was immediately drawn to the spectacle of a woman who was partly disrobed, standing on the rail of the bridge and apparently waving farewells.
After a pause of a few seconds, the woman plunged downward. Her skirt caught on some of the bridge braces, and she hung for a moment, then dropped into the water and disappeared, and then began swimming vigorously. Meantime, a man was seen running across the bridge to the south bank of the stream. He was soon following along opposite the swimmer. but she simply kept with the current and showed no desire to turn to either shore. The note, which was picked up with her clothing on the bridge, was addressed to a woman at Calgary, Alberta, who is rearing brown woman's young son. Her husband, she claims, is serving a penitentiary term. Annetta Brown body found May 30th, 1914. The body of Annetta Brown, the woman who dramatically ended her life by jumping from the Yakima River Bridge on May 5th as Northern Pacific Train number 4 was coming into the Clallam Yards, was found Thursday morning by a policeman, Reed. Mr. Reed had gone down to the south bank of the river with a fishing pole after he went off duty Thursday morning, and about a half mile below town, he located the body at a point where the river divides into 3 channels. It was found in the middle of the channel.
Thank you, girls. Okay, the next thing I'll tell you about are a couple of girls that weren't from here, but they were from the lower county. They like to take their children, they carry one on a hip and dragging 2 others and a couple kids and each, and they take them over to their mother's house. Now that wasn't up here, remember, that was Ellensburg, okay, say Ellensburg. And then after that, they would find some guy who had a little bit too much homebrew or whatever to drink and talk him into bringing them up here to work at one of the houses. So then they'd work at the houses, and I don't know if the guy would stay here, but maybe, or maybe they hitched a ride back on the train. Who knows, they had money then. And they'd go back to Ellensburg. Well then, these same girls, during the 1940s, the country, of course, was short of men. They were all fighting the war. And so these same 2 girls were women now, would go out in the fields and shock grain and work in the hay and anything they could to make money for those babies. Because this was a very hard life for these women. And I know the men, you know, tell the stories about they had a punch card over here, whatever else, you know, going on. But you know, the gals had a rough life over there. And one time, when my husband and I first started business, there was a lady in town, and she was one of those girls that worked over there. She wore a white blouse, a white skirt, a red thin bandana in her hair, and she carried a red purse. And she had flaming red hair, and she had real red lipstick. But she was a very kind woman, you know, and people would tell me, you know, that she worked over there, and I thought she was a nice person. She always went to the funerals. She didn't have a lot of money, so of course there was always food at the funeral places, and she'd go and have a dinner or whatever. But she was a very, you know, lovely person about taking a card, always remembered people's birthdays and everything with a big card. And when I was in theater, I asked her one time, I said, would you like to come to one of my plays? She'd love to, so I got her a ticket, and she came up to watch my play, and she loved it and everything. And after I took her home, I didn't realize that I had been playing the bad girl in the plays all the time. It was a melodrama, you know, but I always, whatever it was, I had to shoot or kill somebody or whatever. And I thought, oh, you know, but she enjoyed the play. And then we have, but anyway, that was one of the ladies, and I thought, you know, she was always going to go to California, but she died before she went to California. Okay, Now we will have a treat for you by having Michael read the Railroad Boomtown of 1912. Michael?
Who's reading the?
Clallam Red Light District.
Okay, yes, okay, Michael is reading the Cleon Red Light District. Already read the
Thank you.
Boomtown. Sorry, Michael.
And
Just
this
thought you were on your,
is not water.
yes, you can have a drink.
This is not water.
Cleon Red Light District, we're gonna read about that.
Okay. Yeah, I do have my glasses on, so that at all times between January 4th, 1949, when Morton took office, and January 1st, 1952, houses of prostitution operated openly and notoriously in the city. 3 in number were required to post bail in the amount of $75 for each every 6 months as a condition precedent to their continuation in business, that the mayor caused them to cease operation January 1st. Is that the mayor that's picture is not up in?
This picture is not there.
Okay, I won't tell that story.
That's fine,
Michael, thank you very much. Okay, we just have 2 short little stories to tell left. This one story is about a little 6-year-old girl who was growing up in one of the houses. Her mother was a working girl, and the mother died. So the mother's friend got enough money together to place this little girl in a home in the county so that she would have a different life. And I thought that was a good story when the fellow told me that. And there's also the nursing home story. My daughter told me this. My daughter worked in the nursing home, and so did your mother. Yeah. 30 years. I guess the old fellas, when they finally reached the nursing home, felt they'd come, to heaven there because they thought the girls were working girls.
good idea.
Thank you, you've all been wonderful. And now, folks, I'm handing the mic back to Charlene, who will wrap up tonight's tale and give you the final scoop.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your hats. August 1928 brought the Upper County its most spectacular prohibition disaster yet. The largest moonshine still in Washington state exploded. We're talking Ronald, folks. The fire tore through 32 homes and 80 acres of timber. Imagine a mushroom-shaped cloud rising over the rooftops, smoke and flames painting the sky above a small town already used to mischief. 8 months earlier, a man named Bert Pellegrini moved to Ronald. He set up shop in Falcon Hall on 3rd Street and dug a tunnel to the DiNaggio garage on 2nd. Hidden chambers along the tunnel stored mash and barrels of whiskey, which were rolled through the passage and hoisted up to trucks bound for Seattle and Tacoma. That is, until he was working on a 100-gallon order, and 250 gallons of alcohol went kaboom. The explosion ignited nearby gas pumps, sending sparks flying like fireworks over the town. The Roslyn and Cle Elum fire departments mobilized immediately, joined by 2,000 Upper County citizens, all racing to keep the flames away from the NWI's powder house, located on the outskirts of Roslyn. Northern Pacific train was even positioned nearby just in case the explosives had to be shipped to safety. Miraculously, the winds died down, the fire was contained, and Pellegrini, burned terribly, was the sole casualty. And here's another photo from a newspaper. It's pretty grainy, but it shows the big hole caused by the explosion and then the old school in the background. Now, first-hand accounts bring the chaos to life. Fabby Kuchin, a Roslyn grocer, said, "I answered the call by towing a two-wheeled hose cart to Ronald behind my grocery truck. It was useless. Nothing much we could do. That fire was just one big whoosh." Dante Panerio, he was 16 at the time and already a Roslyn barber, said he walked to Ronald after the fire had died down and saw all those smashed barrels and buckets of moonshine. Ronald resident Katie Kauzlarich, when asked why she stayed away from the fire, said, "I had something more important to do," as the next morning her daughter Catherine was born. Matt Zauer of Ronald, and he's shown here, second from the left, he said, "I was helping deliver groceries for Morris Savio's grocery. We just returned to the store when the explosion blew all the windows out of Falcon Hall. Our roof caught fire from flying sparks, but we got it out and herded the cows, pigs, and chickens to safety." And here's another shot of that big hole. Julia Walgren, who lived her whole life in Ronald, was crowned Pioneer Queen in 1993 and passed away in 2018 at the age of 99. In a 2002 interview with Fred Krueger, she recounted the Ronald Still explosion in vivid detail.
I remember the still blowing up because I was 10 years old and I heard it and I seen the big, where it blew up, it was just like a big vapor tire up in the air. And then all at once, the fire, I mean, it started burning. And I tell you, it was a big blaze, it was a hot day, and nobody could, well, they just had horse carts, I mean, and people, the miners were working, they blew the whistle so the miners could come out and help their families, and every house, they'd maybe take the furniture out, they didn't have nothing to haul it away with, so it'd be out in the street, it would burn, and 32 houses burned in about, what was it, not very long, I guess 25 or 35 minutes or something like that. It was just really bad. Then the wind came up and it started going towards Roslyn. They had to shut the highway off. It was going towards the powder shed in Roslyn. They thought that was going to blow up, and they finally got it stopped on that end, and good thing it didn't blow up this way because those 32 houses were like, well, where the grocery store is, and from there down, there was a gas station next to it, and that. Then I think none of them, hardly any of them were rebuilt, you know, really.
Well, they were recovered.
And almost all those people moved away. So everything changed. I mean, you know.
The public, it seems, had little respect for the dry laws. One case on appeal to the Washington State Supreme Court made front-page news for a rather unusual reason. The jury, apparently curious about the evidence, had sampled 5 pints of the allegedly illegal liquor to test its potency. Reports say the jurors were not entirely sober when they delivered their verdict. But the Supreme Court confirmed the conviction anyway. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. By the 1930s, the nation had made up its mind. The 18th Amendment had failed. Despite the crackdown, Americans had not stopped drinking. During the dry years, wine consumption skyrocketed by over 70%, while hard liquors rose by about 10%. In the Upper County, just as elsewhere, people continued to brew, sip, and sell in clever ways. And with the Great Depression squeezing wallets, the dry laws became more of a nuisance than a deterrent. The moment of reckoning came on November 8, 1932, when voters across Washington sent a clear message. Prohibition was over. By April 1933, city councils in Roslyn, Cle Elum, and South Cle Elum had passed measures about allowing beer licenses. 27 businesses, 16 in Roslyn, 7 in Cle Elum, and 4 in South Cle Elum, were cleared to sell beer legally once again. And then, on December 5th, 1933, the nation breathed a collective sigh of relief. The 21st Amendment was ratified, officially repealing Prohibition. Dry raids, illicit stills, bootlegging, and moonshine disappeared from the newspaper's front pages. The people of the Upper County could finally embrace a piece of their cultural heritage that had endured for generations. No more hiding homebrewed Dago Red or White Mule. No more sneaking bottles through tunnels or under piles of ashes. Respectability returned, and with it, a long-held tradition of enjoying spirits in moderation, legally, proudly, and without fear. And there you have it, folks.
Good job. We got 4 minutes for questions. Not saying we can answer them, but.
I wanted to make just basically a statement. My mom used to tell me that she would ride her horse from the east end of town over to Railroad Street, and she'd see a lot of ladies outside sitting on horses.
Can you all hear?
No.
No, that's okay. I'll try to. All right. My mom used to tell me before she passed that on Railroad Street, where all the young ladies hung out at, on the porch, out on the sidewalk, near the tracks, she said she would ride her horse down there, and she was about 12 to 13 years old. And she said they were very respectful to her, didn't give her a hard time, didn't threaten her, didn't try to whatever. But she said they were the nicest ladies she's ever met. And she expected totally different because my grandma used to tell her, don't go down there. But she also made a trip, like my mom would, down to the jungle where all the transients and all the hobos were. And they treated her very, very, very special. They would give her something to eat or drink. They wouldn't bother her. They would even make lewd remarks or anything. Just, they were good people. So I just wanted to say that.
Anything else? Okay, I think Michael wanted to say something. We do have books for sale in the back, if anybody's interested. And we've got cookies and some lemonade and water and coffee. So help yourself. Oh, I better turn this off.
Real quick. I don't know if you guys caught that. This is a real still. Didn't this belong to your grandfather?
My father-in-law had this still. And then my husband shined it up when we put it up on the 3rd floor for a display. They're normally not this shiny.
I think that's amazing. And this, again, I attempted to open this when I first, before everyone arrived.
What is it?
I don't open it.
What's in
Go
there?
outside and open it. This is a real thing. So, hey, I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. To, leave a nice donation on the way out so that we can pay our electric bill. And keep in mind that we have the coffee table book. I don't know if you guys seen the coffee table book that we have. We have a newsletter. You're welcome to pick up a copy of the newsletter. It's a great organization. We have about 50 members, and we have some really good people running the Historic Society. So again, let's give these guys a round of applause. Next month, Bill Hass, I don't know, anybody know Bill Hass in here? Raise your hand if you know Bill. Bill's going to be here. And it should be a good presentation. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you later.